You were supposed to be gone until Monday. Connor Hayes said it like Talia Brooks had made a mistake by coming home to her own penthouse. She stood outside the glass entry doors on the 42nd floor, one hand still wrapped around the handle of her suitcase, the other holding the key card that had just flashed red for the second time. No access. Inside, soft jazz played from the speakers she had installed 3 years earlier. 2 wine glasses sat on the marble kitchen island. A woman Talia had never invited into her home was leaning against the counter, wearing Talia's cream silk robe like it belonged to her. For one strange second, nobody moved. Talia could hear the hum of the elevator behind her and the steady pounding of her own heart. Connor opened the door only a few inches. He wore dark slacks and an open white shirt, looking less embarrassed than inconvenienced. "Why doesn't my key work?" Talia asked. Her voice came out quieter than she expected. Connor glanced back at the woman in the kitchen. Sloane Mercer. Talia recognized her from company holiday parties and investor dinners. Always polished, always smiling a little too long when Connor spoke. "We need to talk," Connor said. "Then let me inside." "That's not a good idea." Talia stared at him. 6 years of marriage, and he could not even open the door all the way. Behind him, Sloane lifted the crystal decanter that had belonged to Talia's mother and poured herself another drink. "Connor," Sloane called. "Does she need to get her things tonight?" "Her things." Talia's fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. She looked past Connor and noticed the wall beside the fireplace. The wedding photographs were gone. Every one of them. In their place hung a large abstract painting she had never seen before. 2 expensive suitcases rested near the sofa. One pink, one black. Neither belonged to her husband. "You moved her in?" Talia asked. Connor exhaled as though she were making the situation harder than it needed to be. "Talia, this marriage has been over for months." "You knew that?" "No. I knew you were working late. I knew you stopped answering when you traveled. I knew you barely looked at me anymore. I did not know you had replaced me while I was in Chicago for 3 days. Sloane stepped closer, still wrapped in Talia's robe. "Maybe this conversation should happen somewhere private." Talia looked directly at her. "This is private. It is my home." Connor's expression hardened. "The penthouse comes through Meridian. It is tied to my position. You need to stop saying everything is yours just because you decorated it." The cruelty of the sentence landed slowly. Talia had chosen every chair, every lamp, every framed photograph. She had made that space warm, while Connor spent years telling people he had built it all himself. "So what happens now?" she asked. "My lawyer will send the paperwork," Connor said. "You can stay at a hotel tonight. We will arrange a time for you to pick up the rest of your belongings." Sloane folded her arms, wearing a small, satisfied smile. Connor finally opened the door wider, not to let Talia in, but to place one of her packed overnight bags in the hallway. "I moved my life forward," he said. Talia looked at the bag, then at the red light on her key card. Her throat tightened, but she did not cry. She did not beg. She simply reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Who are you calling?" Connor asked. Talia met his eyes. "The person who actually controls the lease." Connor almost laughed. Almost. Because what he did not know was that the penthouse had never belonged to Meridian. It had never belonged to him. And before the sun came up, Connor Hayes would be the one standing outside the door. The hotel room was 12 blocks away, but by the time Talia closed the door behind her, it felt like she had crossed into someone else's life. She set her suitcase beside the bed and stood there in her coat, staring at the quiet beige walls. Her phone was still in her hand. She had not called the property manager yet. She had not called a lawyer. For nearly a minute, she did nothing at all. Then Connor sent a message. "We will handle this like adults tomorrow." Talia read it twice. 6 years of marriage had been reduced to a locked door, a packed bag, and a message asking her to be reasonable. She sat on the edge of the mattress and looked down at the thin gold band on her finger. There had been a time when Connor would have driven across the city just because she said she was having a bad day. They met 6 years earlier at a neighborhood fundraiser in Brooklyn, before the tailored suits, the private elevators, and the business dinners that always seemed to run past midnight. Connor had been helping carry folding tables into a church basement when one of the legs collapsed. Talia laughed. He looked at her and said, "You could help instead of judging me." She did help. Afterward, they ate cold pizza on the front steps and talked until the volunteers turned off the lights. He told her he admired people who did not need to impress a room. Talia believed him. At the time, She introduced herself as an independent strategy consultant. It was true, just incomplete. She did not mention that Halcyon Asset Management was partly controlled by her family. She did not mention the Brooks Family Property Trust or the buildings it held across New York. She wanted one relationship in her life that did not begin with someone calculating what her last name was worth. Connor made that feel possible. During their first year of marriage, they lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Queens where the radiator clanged all winter and the kitchen drawer refused to close. They were happy there, or at least Talia had been. When the penthouse became available, she arranged the lease through a management company owned by the family trust. Connor assumed Meridian Urban Holdings had negotiated it as part of his promotion. She almost corrected him that night. Then she saw the pride on his face as he walked from room to room, imagining he had finally arrived. She told herself the truth could wait. Over the years, waiting became easier than explaining. Talia helped rewrite his presentations, prepared him for interviews, and sat awake beside him while he practiced speeches for executives who later called him brilliant. She never asked for credit. She thought marriage meant building something together, even when only one person's name appeared on the door. Her phone rang. It was Leon Brooks. "Talia," her brother said. "You called and hung up. What happened?" She looked toward the dark hotel window, where her reflection seemed smaller than she remembered. Connor moved another woman into the penthouse. Silence filled the line. Then Leon asked, very carefully, "Does he know who holds the lease?" Talia wiped one tear from her cheek before it could fall any farther. "No," she said. "He never asked." That was the part that finally broke something open inside her. Connor had spent years enjoying a life he believed he had earned alone, and Talia had spent those same years making herself invisible so he could feel important. She had hidden her power to protect their love. Now the truth she had kept quiet was the only thing left that could protect her. By 6 the next morning, Talia had stopped asking herself whether Connor had made a terrible mistake. Mistakes were careless. What he had done required planning. She sat at the small desk in the hotel room with her laptop open, a cup of coffee cooling beside her, and the city turning gray beyond the window. Leon had offered to come over, but she told him no. She needed one quiet hour before anyone tried to protect her. The first thing she opened was the shared calendar Connor had forgotten was still connected to her account. Late client dinner, investor drinks, strategy meeting. The same phrases appeared again and again. Always on nights, he came home smelling like expensive cologne that was not his. Talia clicked through the entries, matching them with credit card statements. A steakhouse in Midtown for 2 people. A boutique hotel charge listed as corporate hospitality. A furniture purchase from a designer showroom in Soho. She stared at that one longer than the others. The delivery address was the penthouse. Her penthouse. Connor had used their joint card to help another woman move into her home. Talia pressed her thumb against the edge of the desk until the shaking in her hand slowed. Then she opened his email. She was not searching blindly. Connor had given her access years ago when she managed his travel and investor meetings. Back then, he used to joke that she knew his schedule better than he did. Now the inbox felt like a room he had assumed she would never enter again. She searched Sloan Mercer. More than 200 results appeared. Most were professional, polished, harmless on the surface. Then Talia found an email from 3 weeks earlier. "Prepare the space before Friday. Talia will be in Chicago." Under it, Sloan had replied, "I still think the photographs should come down before the dinner." Connor answered, "Already handled." Talia leaned back from the screen. The room went silent except for the air conditioner humming beneath the window. He had not acted in a moment of weakness. He had scheduled her removal. Another message sat in a thread about an investor dinner plan for that evening. Sloan had written, "The penthouse will make the right impression." Connor replied, "Once Talia is out, the place finally matches the life I am building." That sentence hurt more than finding Sloan in the robe. Talia read it once, then again, until the words lost their shape. For years, Connor had told her she was too private, too simple, too uninterested in status. He complained that she wore the same black dress to company events. He laughed when she said she preferred neighborhood restaurants to places with 3-month waiting lists. She had believed those comments came from stress. She had told herself ambition had made him impatient, not cruel. Now she understood. Connor had not simply fallen for someone else. He had begun treating Talia like an embarrassing chapter he needed to edit out. Her phone lit up with another message from him. "Do not make this ugly." We can work out a fair arrangement. Talia almost laughed. Fair. He had locked her outside, packed her belongings, erased her photographs, and invited investors into the home she provided. Still, some quiet part of her wanted to hear him say there had been a reason. That he had been confused. That the man from the Brooklyn fundraiser was still somewhere inside him. Then she noticed an attached building request in the email thread. Connor had asked management to remove Talia from the approved resident list and add Sloan instead. He had signed the form as leaseholder. Talia closed her eyes. When she opened them, the last of her doubt was gone. She called Marissa Cole, the attorney who had handled the property trust for more than a decade. Marissa answered on the third ring. Talia, is everything all right? No, Talia said. Her voice was steady now. My husband moved his girlfriend into the penthouse and changed my access. Marissa was silent for a moment. Does he understand the lease structure? He thinks Meridian owns it. And what do you want? Marissa asked. Do you want a divorce? Or do you want him frightened? Talia looked at Connor's email on the screen. Once Talia is out, she thought about how many times she had made herself smaller so he could feel larger. I want every message preserved, she said. I want every false statement documented. Then I want my home back. Marissa's tone changed immediately. Do not contact him again. Forward everything to me. Talia placed her wedding ring beside the cold coffee. Her hand was still trembling, but when she began forwarding the files, she did not miss a single one. Connor believed he had removed her from his future. By sunrise, Talia was building the record that would remove him from hers. At 9:15 that morning, Talia sat across from Marissa Cole in a glass-walled conference room 20 floors above Park Avenue, watching 3 documents appear on the screen between them. Marissa wore a navy suit, no jewelry except a plain silver watch, and the calm expression of someone who trusted paper more than promises. I need you to understand exactly what happens next, she said. Once you sign, Connor loses permission to live in the penthouse. His access can be revoked. His belongings must be protected for 30 days. You cannot throw anything away, damage anything, or give him a reason to claim retaliation. Talia looked at the first page. Termination of residential license. Connor's full name sat in the center like it belonged to a stranger. How fast can the building update the system? She asked. Tonight, if management receives everything before noon. Marissa studied her face. You do not have to do this today. He changed my access yesterday. I know. He moved another woman into my home. I know that too. Talia picked up the pen, but her hand stopped above the signature line. For a moment, she saw Connor in their old apartment in Queens, standing over a smoking pan and insisting burnt eggs counted as breakfast. She heard him laughing on the floor of the empty penthouse before the furniture arrived. Those memories did not excuse him. That was what made signing harder. The man she was removing from her home had once felt like home. Talia, Marissa said quietly, ending his access is not the same as erasing your marriage. He made his choices before you entered this room. Talia signed. Then she signed the second document, revoking all unauthorized resident privileges. The third required the building to inventory Connor's property and place anything left behind in secure storage. Marissa gathered the pages. There is one more issue. She turned the laptop toward Talia. An event request had been submitted for that evening. 12 guests. Private dinner. Senior executives from Meridian Urban Holdings and 2 representatives from Northstar Capital Partners. Connor had listed himself as the resident host. Talia read the guest names twice. He is bringing investors there tonight? Apparently. After locking me out? He filed the request 3 days ago. Talia leaned back. Of course he had. The photographs were removed before she returned. Sloan's furniture had already been delivered. This was not only about replacing a wife. Connor wanted to display a finished version of his new life to people who could move his career forward. Can the dinner be canceled? Talia asked. Yes. Marissa paused. But if we cancel it now, Connor will move the meeting somewhere else and control the explanation. Talia looked through the conference room window at the city below. Yesterday, Connor had expected her to disappear quietly into a hotel while he poured wine for executives in her kitchen. Do not cancel it, she said. Marissa raised an eyebrow. Are you certain? Let him invite everyone. By noon, the notices had been delivered electronically and by courier. Connor called 7 times. Talia did not answer. His 8th call went to voicemail, followed by a message. Whatever you are doing, stop. The dinner is important. We will discuss the apartment tomorrow. Apartment. Not home. Not ours. Just an asset he believed he could use. Across town, Connor paced through the penthouse while Sloane directed a catering team around the dining room. Why is management asking for proof that you hold the lease? She asked. Connor loosened his tie. Talia is creating drama. She knows tonight matters. Sloane glanced toward the elevator. Can she actually interfere? Connor gave a short laugh, but his eyes stayed on his phone. She does not have that kind of power. At 12:01 that night, the building system processed Talia's signed order. Connor's name vanished from the active resident list. The next morning, he stepped into the lobby for coffee, leaving Sloane upstairs with the caterer. When he returned, he pressed his key card against the private elevator panel. The light flashed red. He tried again. Red. There is something wrong with the system, he told the front desk. The building manager came forward carrying a sealed envelope. No, Mr. Hayes. The system is working correctly. Connor stared at him. I live here. The manager handed him the notice. Not anymore. Connor tore the envelope open, his face tightening as he reached Talia's signature. Then the private elevator chimed behind him. Several Meridian executives stepped into the lobby for the dinner he had promised would take place in his penthouse. Connor looked from them to the red light on the panel. For the first time, he realized Talia had not simply locked him out. She had allowed his most important guests to arrive first. Connor's face changed the moment he saw the Meridian executives standing behind him. Until then, he had been angry. Now he looked afraid. There has been a misunderstanding, he said, forcing a smile as he stepped away from the elevator panel. Building security made an error with my access. Richard Cole, Meridian's chief operating officer, glanced at the red light. Can they fix it? Of course. Connor turned to the front desk. Call whoever you need to call. The building manager did not move. The access change was authorized by the leaseholder. Sloane appeared on the security monitor from upstairs, speaking through the intercom. Connor, the caterers are asking where everyone should sit. He pressed the button too hard. Stay there. I am handling it. Behind him, one of the North Star representatives checked her watch. Connor lowered his voice and leaned toward the manager. I have lived here for 3 years. You were granted residential permission, the manager replied. That permission was terminated. By my wife. By the person with legal authority over the unit. Connor looked around the lobby as if the right expression might change what everyone had heard. Then he pulled out his phone and called Talia. This time, she answered. What did you do? He asked. I signed the documents you should have read before moving someone into the penthouse. My executives are standing here. I know. Connor walked several feet away, but the marble walls carried every word. Open the elevator. No. Talia, this dinner could decide the Harbor Line deal. Then you should have chosen a location you were allowed to use. His jaw tightened. You are embarrassing me because you are upset. Talia's voice stayed calm. You locked me outside my home and told me to collect my belongings later. Do not call the consequences embarrassing. Connor looked back at Richard, who was now speaking quietly with the North Star team. We can discuss the marriage tomorrow. I need 1 hour tonight. You already used your hour, she said. You used it to remove my photographs and move Sloane's luggage into my bedroom. Before he could answer, the private elevator opened. Talia stepped into the lobby with Marissa beside her and Leon a few feet behind. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a slim leather folder. Connor stared at her. You came here to make a scene? No, Talia said. I came because you already made one. The building manager handed her a temporary access card. The panel turned green immediately. That small sound, a soft electronic chime, silenced the entire lobby. Richard looked from Talia to Connor. Who exactly holds the lease? Connor answered too quickly. Meridian arranged the residence through my compensation package. That is not correct, Marissa said. She opened the folder and passed Richard a copy of the master agreement. The penthouse is controlled by Brooks Family Property Trust. Mrs. Hayes is the authorized beneficiary and residential designee. Sloane stepped out of the elevator upstairs and appeared in the lobby a minute later, still dressed for dinner. Her smile disappeared when she saw Leon. Leon Brooks, one of the North Star representatives said. Leon gave a polite nod. My sister asked me to attend. Connor looked at Talia as if he had never seen her clearly before. Your sister? Leon ignored him. Talia turned to the waiting guests. I apologize for the inconvenience. The dinner cannot continue in the penthouse because it was scheduled without authorization. The catering team will be paid in full, and transportation has been arranged to take everyone to Meridian's Midtown office. Richard's expression hardened. Connor told us this was his residence. It was, Talia said, until he violated the terms. Sloane folded her arms. This is petty. Talia looked at the woman wearing a dress she recognized from the donation bag in her closet. You can keep the dress, she said, but you cannot keep the apartment. Nobody laughed. Connor stepped closer to Talia. You have made your point. Not yet. Marissa removed a second folder from her bag. Connor's eyes dropped to the Meridian logo on the cover. What is that? He asked. Talia held his gaze. The reason Harborline was never as secure as you told everyone it was. For the first time that evening, Richard stopped looking annoyed and started looking concerned. Connor reached for the folder, but Marissa pulled it back. Inside were emails, financing statements, and one claim Connor had repeated to Meridian's board for months. A claim about access to family-backed real estate guarantees. A claim Talia had never approved. Losing the penthouse had humiliated him. What was inside that second folder could cost him everything else. Richard took the second folder from Marissa and opened it right there in the lobby. The first page showed the Harborline redevelopment budget, nearly $400 million tied to a mixed-use project along the East River. The second page showed the financing structure Connor had presented to Meridian's board. Near the bottom, under additional security, were the words family-backed real estate access. Richard looked up. What family? Connor stepped closer. This is not the place to discuss confidential company business. You made it the place, Richard said. You invited us here. Sloane moved beside Connor, her voice lower now. You told Northstar the Brooks portfolio could support the bridge loan. Connor did not answer her. He looked at Talia instead. You went through my files. The files were connected to accounts you asked me to manage, Talia said. You also used my home address and my family's name to create the impression that you had access to assets you never controlled. Connor gave a short, nervous laugh. I never said the trust had signed anything. No, Marissa said. You were careful. You called the support available. You called it expected. You let people reach the conclusion you wanted without correcting them. Richard turned another page. There were copies of Connor's emails to Meridian's finance committee, along with a presentation slide showing the penthouse as evidence of personal liquidity and family alignment. Talia remembered helping him choose the font for that presentation. At the time, he told her it was only a general overview. She had trusted him enough not to read the final version. That trust now sat in Richard's hands as evidence. Sloane stared at Connor. Do you actually own anything connected to this deal? That is not relevant. It is relevant to me, she said. You told me the apartment was yours. You told me your wife had no involvement in Harborline. Connor's face tightened. She did not. Not until she decided to punish me. Talia felt something inside her go still. Not numb. Clear. This is not punishment, she said. This is an audit. The lobby went quiet. You brought another woman into my home. You removed my name from the resident list. You used my family's reputation to support a deal without permission. None of that happened because I was angry. It happened because you believed I would never look closely. Richard closed the folder. Did the Brooks Family Property Trust authorize any guarantee for Harborline? No, Talia said. Did you authorize Connor to represent that support as available? No, Connor stepped between them. Talia, think about what you are doing. Hundreds of jobs depend on this project. Then Meridian should review the project based on real financing, not promises you made about property that was never yours. She turned to Richard. I am not asking you to cancel Harborline. I am stating, for the record, that neither I nor the trust approved a guarantee. One of the Northstar representatives immediately pulled out her phone. We need to pause our commitment until legal reviews the disclosure. Connor looked at Sloane. Tell them this is being blown out of proportion. Sloane did not move. For the first time, she looked less like his partner and more like someone calculating her distance from him. Richard handed the folder back to Marissa. Connor, you are on administrative leave effective immediately. Do not contact the financing team until counsel reaches out. Richard, come on. Your building access is not the problem anymore. The executives left without another word. Sloane followed them to the revolving doors, then stopped and looked back at Connor. You said she was nobody, she said quietly. You built this entire story around that. Connor watched her walk away, but Talia saw no heartbreak on his face. Only panic. Upstairs, After security escorted the caterers out and the apartment finally emptied, Talia stood alone in the living room. The music had stopped. Half-filled glasses remained on the counter. She opened the hall closet and found the wedding photographs stacked behind a box of Sloane's shoes. Talia picked up one frame. In the picture, Connor was smiling at her like she was the only person in the room. Her throat tightened. She sat on the floor and cried for the first time since the door locked behind her. Not because she wanted him back. She cried because part of her still remembered the man who carried folding tables in Brooklyn, and she finally understood that man was not coming to save their marriage. The next morning, the hotel called her room. "Mrs. Hayes, there is a gentleman downstairs asking to see you." Talia closed her eyes. Did he give a name? Connor Hayes. She almost told them to send him away. Then the clerk added, "He says he came alone. No attorney. No assistant." Talia looked at the wedding ring resting beside her phone. Connor had lost the penthouse, the deal, and the confidence of everyone in that lobby. Now he wanted to talk. But Talia was about to learn whether he regretted betraying her or only regretted discovering who she really was. Connor was waiting in a corner booth near the hotel lobby, in the same kind of quiet coffee shop where they used to meet before either of them could afford expensive dinners. His suit jacket was gone. His shirt was wrinkled, and a paper cup sat untouched between his hands. For a moment, Talia saw the man from Brooklyn again. Then he looked up and said, "Why did you never tell me?" The question stopped her before she reached the table. Not "I am sorry." Not "How could I do this to you?" Why did you never tell me? Talia sat across from him and placed her phone face down beside her. "Tell you what? About the trust. Halcyon. Your family. All of it." Connor leaned forward. "I was your husband. You were. Do you understand how insane this looks? I spent 6 years thinking we were building everything from nothing, and the entire time you had access to buildings, capital, people like Leon." Talia studied his face. He looked exhausted, but not broken. He looked like a man whose numbers had stopped adding up. "You did not come here to talk about Sloane," she said. "I made a mistake with Sloane. You moved her into my home. I know. You packed my clothes. I know. You took down our wedding pictures before I even knew the marriage was over." Connor looked toward the window. "Things have been bad for a long time. Then you should have said that before you replaced me." His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and turned it over. Talia noticed the name before it disappeared. "Richard." Connor rubbed both hands over his face. "I could lose my position. You could. Harborline could collapse. It does not have to. Meridian can rebuild the financing without your false promises." His expression sharpened. "You are enjoying this." Talia felt the old instinct rise inside her, the need to soften her voice so he would not feel attacked. This time, she let the silence stay. "No," she said. "I am finally looking at it clearly." Connor lowered his voice. "If you had told me who you were, none of this would have happened." Talia stared at him. There it was. The truth he had come to give her without realizing it. "What would have changed?" she asked. "I would have understood the situation. Would you have respected me more?" Connor did not answer. "Would you have kept Sloane out of the penthouse because I was your wife, or because my family owned the lease? That is not fair. It is the only question that matters." He reached across the table, but Talia moved her hand before he could touch it. "We can fix this," he said. "I will end things with her. I will explain everything to Meridian. We can go somewhere, get away from all of this." "You do not want me back," Talia said. "You want access back." Connor's face tightened. "That is not true." "Then tell me one thing you miss about me that has nothing to do with the penthouse, the trust, or the deal." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Talia slipped the wedding ring from her finger and placed it beside his coffee. "You should have treated me with dignity when you thought I had nothing." Connor looked at the ring as if it were evidence against him. "Talia, please. You did not lose me yesterday. You lost me every time you decided my silence meant I would accept anything." She stood and picked up her phone. As she turned away, Connor's screen lit up again. This time, the message was visible. It was from Sloane. "I sent the emails to Meridian Legal. They asked for everything." Connor grabbed the phone too late. His face drained of color. Talia stopped. Sloane had not disappeared. She had started protecting herself, and whatever she had sent could prove Connor had lied to more people than anyone realized. Connor read Sloane's message twice, then pushed away from the table so quickly that his coffee tipped against the lid. "She does not know what she is doing," he said. Talia remained standing beside the booth. "It sounds like she knows exactly what she is doing." Connor called Sloane. She declined the call. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. A second message appeared. Do not contact me outside counsel. Connor stared at the screen, and for the first time since Talia had known him, he seemed to understand that charm was not going to fix the room around him. By noon, Meridian's legal department had received months of messages between Connor and Sloane. In them, he claimed the penthouse belonged to him, described Talia as financially dependent, and promised that her family connections would secure Harborline once the board approved the preliminary deal. One email was worse than the rest. Connor had written, "Talia signs whatever I put in front of her." Talia read the sentence in Marissa's office that afternoon. Her hands did not shake this time. "I never signed anything," she said. "That is why this matters," Marissa replied. "He did not forge your name, but he represented your cooperation as guaranteed." Leon stood near the window, jaw tight. The trust should take everything off the table. Talia looked at her brother. "No. Harborline employs hundreds of people who had nothing to do with this. Connor counted on you thinking that way. Then he was right about one thing." She closed the file. "I am not going to punish an entire company to prove I can punish him." Meridian removed Connor from the project that evening. The board announced an internal review and began rebuilding the financing without his claims. Northstar suspended Sloane after discovering she had attended private investor meetings in the penthouse while knowing Talia had not approved them. Sloane asked to meet Connor one final time in the lobby of a midtown office tower. He arrived expecting loyalty. Instead, she handed him a small box containing the key card he had given her. "You told me she was nobody," Sloane said. "You told me you owned the apartment. You told me the deal was protected." Connor lowered his voice. "You were part of this too. I believed you. That does not make you innocent." "No," she said. "It makes me stupid." She set the box on a table between them. "But I am not going down to protect a man who lied about everything." 2 weeks later, Connor sat across from Talia in a mediation room with gray carpet, bottled water, and no windows. He had hired an attorney who argued that 6 years of marriage gave him an interest in the penthouse. Marissa placed the trust documents on the table. The property had been secured before the marriage. Connor had never paid the lease, never held ownership, and never been named a beneficiary. His attorney went quiet. Connor looked at Talia. "You planned for this." "My family planned for the property," she said. "You planned the betrayal." The marital accounts were divided fairly. Connor kept his retirement savings, his car, and the portion of their joint funds that legally belonged to him. Talia could have challenged more. She chose not to. As they reviewed the final agreement, Connor leaned toward her. "Why are you letting me keep any of it?" Talia met his eyes. "Because I am ending a marriage. I am not becoming you." His face tightened, but he had no answer. When the papers were placed in front of them, Connor held the pen above the signature line. Months earlier, he had expected Talia to sign whatever he gave her. Now his own hand trembled. He signed. Outside the mediation room, Leon waited beside the elevators. "Are you all right?" he asked. Talia looked back through the glass door. Connor remained at the table alone, staring at the agreement that left him with everything that had truly been his. It was far less than he had spent years pretending to own. "I will be," she said. Then Marissa stepped into the hallway holding an envelope delivered by the building manager. Inside was the final inventory from the penthouse. At the bottom of the list was one item Talia had not expected to see. A sealed letter Connor had hidden behind their wedding photographs, dated 3 months before Sloane moved in. Talia turned it over in her hand. Whatever Connor had written before his lies collapsed would not change the divorce, but it might reveal whether he had ever planned to leave quietly, or whether locking her out had only been the first step. Talia waited until she was alone in the penthouse before opening Connor's letter. 3 months had passed since the mediation, and the apartment no longer looked like the place where he had tried to erase her. The wedding photographs were gone, but not hidden. Talia had placed them in a box with the other things she was finally ready to stop carrying. She sat near the living room window as evening settled over Manhattan and unfolded the single page. Connor's handwriting was rushed. "Talia, by the time you read this, I will have made changes you will not understand. Sloane understands the life I am trying to build. I hope someday you accept that love is not always enough." Talia read the sentence again. Then she noticed the date. He had written it weeks before changing her access, before packing her belongings, before pretending her return from Chicago had caught him by surprise. There had been no sudden mistake. He had planned every detail, and still expected her to accept the blame. Talia folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. She did not cry. Some truths arrive too late to break your heart, because your heart has already learned how to protect itself. Her phone rang. It was Leon. "Are you still coming tonight?" he asked. "Everyone is already arguing about where to order dinner." Talia smiled. "I am coming. Give me 10 minutes. Did you open the letter?" She looked at the envelope on the table. "Yes. And it said more about him than it ever said about me." Before leaving, Talia walked through the room slowly. Connor's office had become a reading room with deep blue chairs and shelves filled with books she had kept in storage for years. The empty wall beside the fireplace now displayed paintings by young black artists from Brooklyn. Her mother's crystal decanter stood safely behind glass, no longer something another person could pick up and claim without permission. The apartment was still beautiful, but it no longer felt like a stage built to prove someone had succeeded. It felt lived in. It felt honest. At the elevator, Talia received one final message from Connor. "I understand now. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." Months earlier, those words might have pulled her backward. Now she understood regret was not always the same as change. Sometimes people only recognize your value after losing access to what you gave them. She typed no reply. She deleted the conversation and slipped the phone into her purse. When the elevator doors opened downstairs, Marissa, Leon, and several friends were waiting in the lobby, laughing over takeout menus. "Your place or mine?" Marissa asked. Talia glanced back toward the private elevator. "Mine," she said, "but only because I invited you." Later that night, the penthouse filled with easy conversation, music, and the smell of barbecue from a small restaurant in Harlem. Nobody discussed investments. Nobody asked what the apartment was worth. They talked about work, bad dates, family, and the ordinary things Connor had once considered too small for the life he wanted. Talia stood near the kitchen, watching people she loved move freely through the home. Leon came beside her. "Do you regret not telling him about the trust sooner?" Talia thought for a moment. "I regret believing I had to hide parts of myself to make someone comfortable. That is not the same thing." "No," she said. "It is not." The doorbell sounded. Talia checked the screen, saw an old friend smiling into the camera, and pressed the button to let her up. The light turned green. That small sound carried more meaning than Connor would ever understand. Once, Talia believed love meant keeping the peace, swallowing disappointment, and making herself smaller so another person could feel important. Now she knew love without respect was only permission dressed as devotion. Connor had tried to remove her from her own home, but the real home she reclaimed was herself. And once a woman remembers she belongs to herself, no locked door can keep her outside again.